Hey everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch Project. You can find me at overwatchproject.com, and also there's links to my YouTube and BitChute channels there, and check out my blog every day. I usually post one or more items on there. This video tonight is about a person that contacted me, a woman that had a near-death experience where she met an Archon, and possibly also Sophia. So let's get into this. Now, this is going to be probably a long video, longer than my normal videos because there's a lot of information to go through here. She sent me her full near-death experience research foundation questionnaire that she filled out, and along with all of her personal information. Now, I've stripped all that out of here, of course, to protect her privacy. But considering the fact that she claimed she had a verifiable experience during an NDE, this is really great stuff. It's direct witness testimony of something that NDERF isn't usually questioning about. So what I did after several email exchanges I had with her, I asked her quite a bit more questions that we'll cover after we go through her report. Keep in mind that some of the things here may seem out of order. Remember that, please remember, if you're familiar with near-death experiences, that once people leave their physical body and they're in an alternate dimensional state, that usually linear time is no longer a factor. So sometimes things may seem out of order, but in my experience in investigating all this, this is quite consistent with many near-death experiences. So let's go through this. If this video becomes too long, hey, you can just pause it or remember where you stopped it on the timeline. Come back to it later, whether you're watching it on BitChute or YouTube. And in reference to this video, there is one other case I'm aware of, actually, that covers this in quite depth. Wayne Bush, who runs trickedbythelight.com, he has a interview page, which I'll link to below in the description section. There is a part, if you scroll down far enough, there is this one section that says very important, must listen. This is his interview with a person that experienced demiurge during the NDE. You can listen to the interview, or he also has the full transcript of it on his website. So I'll link to that below. And if you need more background information on NDEs, of course, check out my website, link section of the book section. There's a lot of information to go through there. So, just for the purposes of this video, I've decided to call this woman from her YouTube handle. I've taken a part of her YouTube handle, and we're just going to say her name is Rose. Like I said, for her privacy, I've removed all of her personal details. The first question NDERF asked her was your condition at the time of the experience, and she wrote life-threatening event but not clinical death. Now, we'll go through these in order. We'll go through their questions and her answers, and I may pause along the way to add some commentary. But if you're watching my channel or familiar with the concept that we may be living in a simulation that's like a soul farm with a reincarnation trap, then a lot of this stuff is going to be, right up your alley. So let's keep going. Your condition at the time of the experience: life-threatening event but not clinical death. Experience included out-of-body experience, presence of unearthly beings, darkness, void, strong emotional tone, life review. Now, a lot of these are very consistent with most. Many NDEs have one or more of these qualities, if not all of them. At the time of this experience, she answered to the question, your religious background at the time of the experience: other or several faiths, other, Buddhist, Tao, New Age. I believe in our email exchanges she also mentioned that she was raised Christian. So nothing that she encountered during her NDE, which you'll see here in a moment, matched any of her beliefs. This is always fascinating to me when that happens, because it shows that you're not imagining it, right? You're not imagining something that you can't possibly have thought of before. Now she considers herself other or several faiths, other possibly Gnostic, Taoist, possibly Universalist. So she now has introduced into her philosophy of reality, possibly that now she's willing to look at the Gnostic beliefs, which is very interesting because she had really no knowledge of this, as far as I know, before her NDE. Now, she considers her experience to be entirely distressing, and you'll see why as we go through this. At the time of the experience, her life was in threatening condition, but not clinical death. She included out-of-body experiences. A lot of these questions, I think they repeat because they want to know if people are changing their answers. Okay, let me get into the experience description now. She writes, I became severely critically ill with sepsis, thought to be caused by a virus, with multi-organ failure and several other complications. I was on a ventilator, and at one point I bled into my lungs and bowel sounds. I don't know what this means. Bowel sounds stopped. But that's what she wrote. Anyway, my physician and care team told me afterward that they believed I would not live. Though my heart never stopped, I was never pronounced dead. I was hospitalized for 16 days, 13 of which I was in the ICU and intubated. I remember fainting and waking up on the floor of my bathroom and telling my fiancé that something was very wrong with me. I put clothes on and walked out to the car, and that was the last clear memory I have of my actual life, real life. I apparently had a seizure at the urgent care and was in septic shock and respiratory arrest. They intubated me and popped me in a helicopter and sent me to the ICU. I don't remember any of that. I remember hearing and feeling a very loud cracking sound, like 2x4 boards being clapped together hard, and a flash of intense colored light. This here part, I always highlight things that popped out at me as being very important. A cracking sound, a noise, a tone. These are the kind of things that are commonly reported when people are about to exit their body, whether it's an NDE or an OBE. Whether it's a voluntary out-of-body experience, like people report, like, and authors have written about, like William Bullman, Robert Monroe, and others. This sound or tone is something that happens, I guess, when our consciousness is changing frequency, I suppose is one way to look at it. Now, this is not, she didn't go into a tunnel or anything, she just had like a flash of intense colored light. I cannot explain how I know this, but I was assessed and the color would be either green or purple, and whichever color I was unsatisfactory to the malevolent being interested in me. I can explain it because it was not part of my belief system at all prior to this, but I believed him to be an Archon. Now, in my email exchanges with her, I believe she, when you're out of body, your telepathy comes back online, and I think, when you look at things, you can kind of identify what they are, and if they're not trying to hide or shapeshift or conceal their true nature, you can kind of see what they are. So at this point now, she meets what she thinks is a being that is an Archon. And it's very interesting. So she was being assessed for some reason. And we'll get into that later, I guess, as we go through this. She mentions it again. I believe the color that flashed was green, though I am not certain of this. I saw and sensed him, and he and everything to do with him was a pinkish purple, so that is probably why that color is at the forefront of this memory of the flash of light that happened. at that same time as the cracking sound. So she's obviously ill. She is really sick and has an OBE during this near-death state, and ends up in the presence of this being that may be an Archon. I sensed that he was very powerful but absent. I asked her what that meant, because there is a kind of a theory out there that since the universe is like a simulation, that these archons, the demiurge, all these concepts that we have about these otherworldly beings, that these are more like an AI of our reality. They're projections of beings that are being generated by this simulation reality that we're experiencing. That's one theory. There's many theories out there, and many that fit all the totality of data, and that's just one of them that I happen to be interested in. So I sensed that he was very powerful but absent. He had delegated to his underlings, which were terrible, low vibrational beings who hate everything. After the crack and the flash of light, I was in a void, like a colorless gray place. The color that flashed wasn't what he could work with. It's very interesting. But I was still in their hands, trapped there. So, at this point, as I'm reading through her report, it almost sounded like she ended up in an NDE, and there was like a glitch, and she wasn't supposed to end up where she ended up. That's one way of looking at this information. I was floating on my back in that void, surrounded by 7 or more low entities. They tormented me with pain, crushing, taunting, horrible emotional energy attack. Throughout the experience, I wanted to flee, resist them, or escape, even though there was no way for me even to try to do so. They had me. All I could do was suffer, and there are no words to describe how terrible this was. I feel really bad for Rose for having to go through this. But as I look back through my history of my channel, I don't remember, I think I've said it more than once, that if enough people get to know a different philosophy than the one that they're indoctrinated with, whether it's a religious or an atheistic philosophy, if they were to somehow have prior knowledge before entering a death state of like a Gnostic concept, when they meet beings, they would be better prepared to handle a situation like this, or any situation where you're being deceived so that you can be reincarnated. So she writes here, in addition to being in horrible torment, I felt that it was a complete injustice, that I did not deserve this, that I did not belong there. I felt like these entities were wrong in every possible way, and I didn't understand why they had me. And this again is almost implying like through a glitch or a bug. We seem to be experiencing that frequently. You can just look at the Mandela effect to figure out that this is something's wrong with the Matrix. And did she end up somehow somewhere where she wasn't supposed to be if she had an NDE? It's something to think about. I'm a good person who genuinely tries to grow and help others. This all sounds so bizarre as I write it, but I'm going to share everything I can remember. Even so, I had a sense that he was almost recruiting, that who I am and what was happening to me had somehow attracted his attention, and that he had the opportunity to snag me, so he did. Since I wasn't someone he could use, I was just left to these awful beings. As you're reading this with me, people who watch my channel regularly, I'm sure you can come up with all kinds of interpretations for what she experienced. And I'll be interested to find out what other people think of this as we go through this. There were phases that I can remember with different types of physical torment, and always along with this was a taunting and emotional energetic attack. She says that more than once, energetic attack. There was an element of life review in this, though it seemed like complete hogwash to me. One thing about Rose's personality that I determined from her report and her answers to me is that she's very strong-willed. And she doesn't carry around this indoctrinated guilt and fear. So, I mean, when you think about it, her prior beliefs were very positive. She's trying to be good to people. She's trying to live a positive life. And so this guilt and fear crap isn't really working on her that well. She's strong-willed. She's resisting. This is what more and more people that enter these NDEs should try to push the boundaries to see what is really going on there. Now she writes, these low creatures hated everything and had no concept of good or bad. They simply wanted to hurt me as much as possible, used my own thoughts against me. It felt completely unjust, and I refused to accept that I was deserving of this. In the first months afterward, I tried not to think about it at all, because if I did, the emotions and memories of it were so powerful that it was like happening again, like what those with PTSD describe. I was being crushed between two surfaces, wires being wrapped around my body and the flesh and skin being flayed off, always while being taunted and mocked. It seemed almost like tests. See here how she writes, they used her own thoughts against her. Now, I think that even in the loving NDEs, they are using our own thoughts against us. They are appearing as our dead relatives, as our pets, as the religious figure we're most comfortable with. Whatever it takes to either, most of the time, just seduce us with ecstasy, which is supposed to be unconditional love, so that we do what they want, or put us in fear and torment. And in her case, a lot of torment. I was not always certain what I did or didn't do that would end one of these awful tests, but there would be times that it would ease, and the low entities would become angry and complain and whine about starting again. I think, at this point, I'm thinking, she's not going along with this, and she doesn't realize how powerful she is. Okay, so she is resisting them, and they are losing the battle. I believe now that it was primarily that I didn't accept their torment or judgment as being correct that seemed to eventually stop it. So see, this is very important. A big clue here that we can stop these attacks. And this connects to a lot of other things, like in UFO research. If you look at the work of Carla Turner and others, that these energetic attacks, these abduction attacks that people suffer, that people can actually resist those too. So we're not really powerless. We're just overwhelmed with fear or some type of seductive ecstasy to try to keep us powerless. She writes, their voices were buzzing and hollow and awful. I began to sense a female presence that for a time I assumed must be one of them. Her presence became more and more pronounced, and the intervals between the torment became longer, and I sensed her as being exceptionally loving. Now, there's a couple ways to look at this, but one way is to say, hey, the program wasn't really winning her over with the fear and the torture, so here comes the love part. I will see this later, but on one of my books that I recommend people read is very important to see how a lot of this stuff is plays out in these NDEs. is My Descent into Death by Howard Storm. There's a lot in her case and Howard Storm's case that are virtually, you could say, interchangeable, except that she is a nicer person. She is a person that tries to live by a moral code. She's trying to be spiritual. And it's very interesting because Howard Storm was a complete atheist and admittedly a pretty rotten individual before his NDE. But they have a very similar NDE experience that starts off with this torturous attack and then transitions into this loving rescue. This is fascinating how these two things are running in parallel here. So she writes, in spite of her loving presence, I was still utterly tormented. It is interesting to me now that it literally never occurred to me to ask anyone or anything for help, not once. I wish that I had. So, Howard Storm asked for help, and he got it. She doesn't, but she's also not being subdued by these attacking creatures, where in Howard Storm's case, he was. He was being completely overtaken by them. He had no defense against them, whereas she does. At one point during this torment, the beings were telling me I was a bad person, and mentally, I was simply rejecting their judgment. Nope, wrong again, low creatures. I'm convinced that if this had gone on long enough, or if she had been better prepared with a different knowledge besides the Buddhist type beliefs that she had, if she had been better prepared for this, she could have easily overtaken these creatures. I rejected their judgments of me, which all seemed to be totally false, and I felt more than heard her decision to lift me out of this. So at this point, the female entity is going to pull her out because she is not accepting the torture and the judgments of her being bad, because she knows deep down inside, hey, she did the best she could as a person. She has nothing to be ashamed of. And that's very important. That's what I try to do. I try to live positively. I try to, just do the best I can. I don't have anything to be ashamed of or guilty for. I'm not perfect, but I'm just going to do the best I can. So I'm playing the reality game here to the best of my ability. And that's all that really anyone can do. So then she writes, she intervened for me. They were not able to hold me. One of the low entities complained, why did you start us up then? In anger, that they would not get to keep me. That's interesting. I wonder who she was talking about there. Is she saying, did the female entity start them up? Or was it that Archon that started it up? I mean, exactly... who is running the show here? So she writes, this still interests me that it said this, and at the time I felt an understanding that there is nothing that is truly outside of her. Not even these low beings. I do not think she set them on me. So she doesn't think so, but it remains a possibility here. Okay, then she writes, she certainly is not the one I saw at the start of this. I was still floating in this no place, but the torment stopped. I was still filled with a great deal of distress, anguish beyond what words could describe. That's pretty common. People don't have words to describe this stuff. It's beyond vocabulary. This experience was horrific on a level that is hard for me to even comprehend now. The memories of it have faded greatly. My sense of flow of time changed a bit at this point. The previous part had seemed stretched or slow and dragged on for an eternity. Time seemed to open up more like normal as I gradually emerged from this no-place dimension, pocket of existence, and immediacy of the agony faded also. Some time after seeing the Archon, and before she came for me, I was outside my body and watching the team work on me, and saw them trying to intubate me. There was a lot of blood coming out of my mouth. People were trying to suction and get a tube in my throat, and it was not working. I felt detached, curious. If anything, I wanted to die and escape the torment. I want to stress that I felt detached, though. It is really hard to describe, but others have said this. It is like a mild curiosity. Will I live? You know, a lot of NDEers, they look at their bodies and they describe it as like looking at a coat you left on a chair or something. And I think that's what she's describing here. That sense that once you're out of your body, that, hey, that body's not me. I'm much better than my body. So, a man came who was able to get me intubated past all of the blood. I watched my mom praising him and thanking him. They called him OCD Mike. This part of the real world activity was later verified. It happened as I lifted out of that no place where I had been tormented. I sensed her and the truths of the universe more fully, and I felt that we were against the backdrop of the entirety of the manifested universe. She is the mother. The language I want to use for her is not the way I normally speak at all. She is cloaked in stars. She is utterly, truly, purely loving, and this love is unconditional. I sensed her as being black, like the void of space, and lit with the stars. Immense, though concepts like size seem totally irrelevant. She is an alien in some way that was completely outside of our normal culture concept of what the word means. She is not terrestrial, not of this planet. She is the spiritual mother of this planet, and we are her beloved children. In my life, I have a multitude of deep kensho experiences where I have felt the resounding living truth that we are everything and everything is love, space, consciousness. In my life, I have wept, laughing with joy at the gorgeous cosmic joke that is the simple truth that we are all the same thing. Let me pause there for a second. I don't think she feels like this anymore, at least not exactly like this, but I am not the same as the Archon, or as the low-level creatures attacking her, or as a serial killer, or as some criminal out there that has no value of human life. Those things are clearly not me. I think this whole oneness is a bunch of bullshit. Now, there may be people out there that have a particular type of consciousness that is a oneness consciousness. They are a collective consciousness. Perhaps they are just generated by the matrix, by the reality itself. That consciousness is not the same as my consciousness or the consciousness of several other people that I know that have a purely individualized existence. That is not, that may be networked into a consciousness. If you think about it like this, the internet may appear to be all one thing, but is really just one thing that is made up of a whole bunch of separate individual parts. A computer can exist without the internet, but the internet cannot exist without computers. So, the thing that, is sort of like a metaphor, I guess. But if a human being that is of an individual nature is a standalone thing, then we may just simply be networked into everything. And that, of course, you may have a group or a cluster that is connected as one and is also networked. And those are like these people that seem mindless. They seem to be acting as a collective. And they don't seem to have any actual sense of self. Who knows? That's just one theory I have. So she writes, we're all the same thing, and there is no such thing as time, and everything is absolutely beautiful and perfect. We are our love somehow, even though I am the tree over there, I am also me, and you're also you. Nothing is, literally nothing can ever be wrong or bad. Everything is totally the best. These truths and the fearlessness they engender are already part of what I am and how I view my world. For this reason, the connection I had to these basic truths was less at the forefront of this experience. What was new was her, an even deeper understanding of what we have been taught to believe isn't right, and also what we can learn by ourselves through rational thought or meditation are not the complete picture either. She is dynamic action love happening of all that is. My belief system has been shaken up quite a lot. I don't know what I believe. But at the very least, I now understand that there are many other conscious intelligences as well as some quite stupid entities with many levels of existence and realities. So she has a complete, total change here. Something that indicates something truly profound happened. Something powerful happened here. I achieved my change through lots of investigation and thought. And she had it in one moment in an incredible near-death experience. But she probably wishes she did it my way, because I didn't have to be tortured to do it. At this point, I feel like more happened, but I can't remember it. The sense that I have is much like falling asleep when your mind wanders from one thing to another and you are unaware of the moment you actually drift off to sleep. This is how I felt, that things happened and then I drifted off. There may be a little bit of mind wiping going on there. Also happens in UFO abduction cases. And of course, probably the full mind wipe right before you're reincarnated. When they removed the breathing tube, I awoke in a lot of distress. I was still very critically ill, puffed up like a Thanksgiving parade balloon. Great difficulty breathing. And now, at this point, she realizes that there's hallucinations involved. And this is critical. If you read like Proof of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander, he clearly differentiates between the time he realizes he was hallucinating and the NDE and out-of-body experience. People that have NDEs that also are in hospitals and then later given drugs and then have hallucinations clearly distinguish the experience later one from the other. It's very important to understand that. So from the powerful medications that helped save my life, I did not recognize my mom. I wrote, and this is my note here, Dr. Eben Alexander case. Very important book to read. Along with many other books on NDEs and a lot of research out there about the super reality that these people experience that's more real than here, and then how they can also realize later after they come out of their hallucination that that was something else. I told the nurse she was an imposter, not the mother. The power and impact of my mother's compassionate presence, it's impossible to describe. I remember when I started to become more lucid, I realized that my mom was really my mom, and feeling shocked and working through acceptance of this new strange information. There is so much of this experience, most of it actually, that has nothing to do with my prior beliefs. I'm still trying to understand and find context for all of it. Let me just pause this for a second while I get something to drink. Okay, so the time of your experience, was there an associated life-threatening event? Yes. Was the experience difficult to express in words? Yes. There really aren't words enough to describe how I felt. I simply knew certain things. The familiarity of the sense of love and oneness, the level of torment, the emotional impact of it all. At what time during the experience were you at your highest level of consciousness and alertness? Though I was unconscious, and it seemed strange to speak about being alert when you are unconscious, the period from the loud crack, flash of light, and utter torment through the end of the time I spent with my mother, through the end of the time I spent with the mother, which she's referring to Sophia there, not her mother, as well as the time I was outside my body watching them suction and reintimate me, were the times I felt most alert. That's pretty common in NDEs. How did your highest level of consciousness and your alertness during the experience compare to your normal everyday consciousness and alertness? Less conscious and alertness than normal. I went unconscious due to septic shock, metabolic encephalopathy, and was also heavily sedated. Please compare your vision during the experience to your everyday vision that you had immediately prior to the time of your experience. After this experience of torment I I could see a sense of things even with my eyes closed, even though I was sedated. During the bleed that happened in my throat and into my lungs. Look, folks, I'm sorry if I'm terrible at reading out loud, but not really. This isn't my forte. If it was, I'd be doing books for Audible. So please bear with me here. My lungs went. When a ventilator cuff cracked, they almost could not get me re-intubated. I remember vividly seeing almost a fountain of blood, people working frantically to save me, and a man doing suction and finally getting the tube in. The memory I have was confirmed by my family and friends. I was fully sedated. My mom praised a guy called OCD Mike, who was the one who finally could save my life by getting the tube past all the blood and swelling. Please compare your hearing during the experience to your everyday hearing that you had immediately prior to the time of your experience. For the first few months after this experience, I am very sensitive to noise and especially too much going on, being easily overwhelmed. That's kind of like a PTSD symptom there. But did you see or hear any unearthly events that were occurring during the time that your consciousness awareness was apart from your physical earthly body? Yes, I saw myself being reintubated and suctioned, as well as seeing the room even though my eyes were closed. What happened with the traumatic reintubation, the things that were said were later confirmed by my family. I could hear the thoughts of people in the room sometimes, as well as I know what they were feeling. Now that's important. Also, more verification that she was out of her body. If we could just do that all the time, the whole world would be a different place. What emotions did you feel during the experience? I felt detachment, largely. I also felt strong preference to die rather than experience the torment I had just gone through again. Though I didn't believe that was a choice I was being offered, I was very detached but still horrified and shaken by the torment, though I know this seems super contradictory. The torment, horror, and wanting to escape it felt real, immediate. The idea of living and dying felt more abstract. And that's because, I believe, that we don't die. You're really just talking about your body dying. And perhaps she knew that if her body did completely die, she would be able to really get away from these people these beings that were bothering her. Did you pass into a tunnel? No. Did you see an unearthly light? No. Did you seem to encounter a mystical being or presence, or hear an unidentifiable voice? I encountered a definite being or voice, clearly of mystical or unearthly origin. I was aware of an evil entity who was not present, low beings who tortured me, and the Great Mother who intervened for me. Did you encounter or become aware of any beings who previously lived on earth who are described by name and religions. Example, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, etc. Yes, I believe she had many names, but the one that feels most true to me is Sophia. And she writes Ma and Aditi near Hursag. Though most would call her Durga or Mary, I did not know most of these names at the time. I'd say I was abstractly familiar with Mary, as she was Protestant upbringing, and had heard of Durga and Tara, but truly the idea of a real goddess entity wasn't a part of my worldview. I've been doing a lot of reading. So now she understands that, what's research after the NDE. That's good that she's doing that. Did you encounter or become aware of any deceased or alive beings? No. Did you become aware of past events in your life? Did you become aware of past events in your life during the experience? No. Did you seem to enter some other unearthly world, some familiar and strange place? It was gray, no place like another dimension. Did time seem to speed up or slow down? Time seemed to go faster or slower than usual. It seemed to last forever. Did you suddenly seem to understand everything? No. Did you reach a boundary or limiting physical structure? No. Did you come to a border or point of no return? No. Did scenes from future come to you? No. During your experience, did you encounter any specific information awareness suggesting that there is either or is not continued existence after earthly life after death? Yes, I sense that there are many dimensions and that the universe is pretty much infinite, with many intelligent beings of many kinds, ranging from her and him all the way through to every possible way of being. That kind of goes in with my total model of reality, where I think what she says is an infinite universe, I think is actually there's a multiverse and an omniverse out there, and virtually every kind of reality exists in some form or another in some contained universe. And we don't have to stay in this one after death. There's many options out there. During your experience, did you encounter any specific information awareness that God or a supreme being either does or does not exist? Yes, though it seems more like it manifests as recognizing things as true now, things I didn't used to believe or even really know about. During your experience, did you encounter any specific information awareness that either did or did not exist prior to this lifetime, that you did not exist or did exist prior to this lifetime? Yes, without really being aware. I considered all possible actual deities male, and my beliefs were not really based on a god or gods. I felt like simply being alive and knowing we are actually one with the lovingness was pretty much it for me. To want more would have felt greedy. There was literally no reference in my prior beliefs for a real goddess, god, or entities of any of that. I was stunned. It's why I didn't think to ask for help when being tormented. I truly didn't believe there was anything you'd actually bother with that actually would bother your requests. During your experience, did you encounter any specific information, awareness that mystical universal connection or unity, oneness either does or does not exist? Now she answered yes, but what does that mean? To me, the oneness does not exist like most people think it does. There may be a oneness field out there that you can plug into, but not every one is oneness. During your experience, did you encounter any specific information or awareness regarding earthly life, life's meaning and purpose? Yes. During your experience, did you encounter any specific information or awareness regarding earthly life's difficulties, challenges, and hardships? No. During your experience, did you encounter any specific information or awareness regarding love? Yes. She loves us. I also now do think being good and grateful and learning is all it takes. Being courageous, being able to hold on to who you really are, not falling for the notion that we are human and therefore bad things, and therefore bad. These things all matter. I'm still trying to figure it out though. Okay, so yeah, the guilt, the fear, the original sin, all that bullshit. That's not true. We are more than humans. We are not the makers of the reality here, I don't think. So we're not responsible for this shit show. During your experience, did you encounter any other specific information or awareness that you have not shared in other questions that is relevant to living our earthly lives? This is mind blowing. This is the part that really makes you think. She writes, yes, we have been and are being tricked. That's it in a nutshell. That's our reality. We have been and are being tricked. Let me just pause here for a second and say something. Sometimes I may sound like I can be a little frustrated with people that have bad intel on reality. I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know. But when other people say things that they clearly aren't informed about, I know that. So should I be frustrated at atheists for what they think, or for some religious fundamentalist? When we're being tricked, shouldn't our frustration, even our anger, be directed at whatever is tricking us? And not our fellow humans that are simply ignorant because we live in a system designed to keep people ignorant. Did you have a sense of knowing, special knowledge or purpose? Yes, I feel I'm supposed to share this. That's funny she should say that, because I also felt compelled to share information, knowing full well that most people out there aren't interested in this, or if they do listen to my videos, with the exception of my regular audience, they just leave from some kind of stupid, ignorant comment, or they're clearly not informed on a lot of things. That's why I built my website, too. Give people a library of choices to enhance their investigation into our reality. What occurred during your experience included content that was entirely not consistent with the beliefs you had at the time of your experience. I had no beliefs whatsoever about a goddess of any kind, and my early Christian upbringing absolutely minimized any importance of Mary. I didn't believe in anything like hell or after-death torment or conscious entities that we could or should bother with requests for help. At most, I had a belief in the second law of thermodynamics. Energy is neither created or destroyed, and we probably reincarnate. Reincarnate. This is it for the moment that matters. Little of this experience aligned with my beliefs. So Buddhist type belief system, is simply the reincarnation wheel of life. And you don't really need to go further than that in some of these, in certain types of beliefs, these Eastern beliefs. But now she's like, wait a minute, there's a lot more stuff going on here. How accurately do you remember the experience in comparison to other life events that occurred around the time of the experience? I remember the experience more accurately than other life events that occurred around the time of the very intense nature of the emotional impact. The PTSD type feelings have faded. Discuss any changes that might have occurred in your life after your experience. The amount that spirituality and being my best matters is unchanged, but I have and am re-evaluating my beliefs. My experience directly resulted in moderate changes in my life. Do you have any changes in your values or beliefs after the experience that occurred as a result of the experience? No. Do you have any psychic, non-ordinary, or other special gifts after your experience that you did not have before your experience? Yes, I can visualize people's energy and can see the nature of their trouble or illness. I have seen what I perceive to be angels twice. I did not previously believe that angels existed at all. And a lot of NDEers come back. Some of them can't wear watches anymore or cell phones because their computers break. It's almost like they're giving off an energy. Other people report psychic powers after NDEs. So that's also quite normal. Are there one or several parts of your experience that are especially meaningful or significant to you? And she answered, the biggest thing that stays with me now are the unanswered questions. My beliefs are fundamentally changed. I have some direction, and I can sense what is true sometimes, but a lot of the beliefs out there are nonsense and contradictory. I honestly feel like I am out to sea in some ways, on turbulent waters. I lived my whole life feeling okay with the idea that I was on my own in a rational world, and that was okay. Now I feel everything is way more wild and fantastic and not really rational. I am just seeking. I feel the same way, really. When you're researching this stuff, you're going to find information. And unless you shut that information out, you're going to have to deal with it. And it can be disturbing, right? It could be like, everything I believed was wrong. Now what? Well, I say F it. Just say, what the F? Who cares? If you're really interested in the truth, you're going to go after the truth. And who cares where that leads? You have to just plow through. That's the way I look at it. Just get to the truth. Now, unfortunately, what ends up happening is you'll find a little fragment of it, and then you'll have more questions than before. But at least you'll have a foundation of something that's real, and it's real because it's based on the total information available and not just selective data, which is what most people live in. Have you ever shared this experience with others? Yes, I've told those closest to me. And now I'm not really close. I've never met this woman in real life, but I'm really happy that she decided to share this with me and you. Did you have any knowledge of near-death experience, NDE, prior to your experience? Yes. I know a few people who have had a beautiful, lovely, comforting kind. I had never heard of one like mine. It has been really confusing, the kind, though, to process the fact that it was I had such a different, horrifying experience like hell. Why would I go to hell? What did you believe about reality of your experience shortly, days to weeks after it happened? Experience was definitely real. It was real. What do you believe about reality of your experience at the current time? Experience was definitely real. I was very ill and heavily medicated, and I know that I was out of it and hallucinating when I woke up. But what happened to me felt different from that. It was a genuine experience. Have your relationships relationships changed specifically as a result of your experience? Yes, I guess I feel like I was, in a sense, reborn by this. It's almost like this is a new life with a changed me. I can't explain how or why, but this experience remade me. I'm glad this specific question is asked because it's actually huge. I feel very changed in so many ways. Have your religious experience, spiritual practices changed specifically as a result of your experience? Yes, I am a seeker again. I've learned a lot and seem to just recognize truth or falseness when I read a book or materials about our creators, her, etc. It is as though I was told and understood a great deal and recognized what is actually true now. When I hear or read things, however, I still have many questions and uncertainty. I can relate to that. At the time in your life, has anything ever reproduced any part of the experience? Yes, at the beginning I could think about it without reliving the horror and torment I experienced. Is there anything else you would like to add about your experience? In some ways, these detailed questions help me understand more about what happened and process all of this. Thank you. Did the questions asked and information provided about accurately... All right. I'm sorry, folks. I'm getting a little tired here. Hold on. Did the questions asked and information that you provided accurately and completely comprehensively describe your experiences? Yes. What could a national organization with an interest in near-death experience do that would be interest to you? Let me know if the researchers have questions for me or information that could help them or anyone else. I really appreciate the materials you make available. Okay. Now they asked some scale questions toward the end of the Endorf form, and she answered them. Were your thoughts speeded up? No. Were your senses more vivid than usual? More vivid than usual. Did you feel separated from your body? I clearly left my body and existed outside of it. Did you have a feeling or peace of pleasantness? No. Did you have a feeling of joy? No. Did you see or feel surrounded by brilliant light? No. Did you seem to encounter a mystical being or presence or hear an unidentifiable voice? I encountered a definite being or voice, clearly mystical and unearthly origin. Did you see deceased or religious spirits? No. Did scenes from your past come back to you? I remember many past events. Did you seem to enter some unearthly world? Some unfamiliar and strange place? Did time seem to speed up or slow down? Time seemed to go faster or slower than usual. Did you feel a sense of harmony or unity with the universe? No. Did you suddenly seem to understand everything? No. Did you seem to be aware of things going on elsewhere as if by ESP? Yes. And the facts have been checked out. Did you come to a border or point of no return? No. Did scenes from the future? They're repeating a lot of the same questions here, I guess, to verify answers. Before my experience, I believe God definitely exists. After my experience, I believe God definitely exists. Before my experience, I believe an afterlife does not exist. And at the current time, I believe I am uncertain if an afterlife exists. Before my experience, I did not fear death. At the current time, I slightly fear death. Before my experience, I believe our earthly lives are probably meaningful and significant, and the same is after. Before my experience, I was greatly compassionate, and after, she is greatly compassionate. Before and after, I was slightly fearful in living my earthly life. I am slightly fearful in living my earthly life. Before my experience, my religious, spiritual life was greatly important to me, and it's still important to her afterward. Now, that concludes the NDE stuff. Then, in an email exchange, Her answers are in red, and my email to her is in black. So let's get into this. I wrote to her, first of all, I want to say thank you again for sharing this information with me. I feel empathy for the distressing experience you had, and I hope you are feeling better every day that goes by since your NDE. As you know, I am trying to understand reality from studying the totality of all data available to me from many sources and viewpoints. She wrote, "You're welcome, and me too." I wrote, "You are a direct witness with valuable intel about existence. Endorf does not deal with Gnostic concepts like Archons, the Demiurge, or soul forms. I think they may want to avoid these concepts, and I wanted to ask you some additional questions that may help you by reflecting on some things you may not have considered." She wrote, "I agree, and I am available to help however I can. I'd be fine with being interviewed or answering any questions here, whatever will help. It helps me too. Thank you for the book recommendations." That was later that I recommended Howard Storm's book and Dr. Eben Alexander's book. So I wrote to her, "Please reflect on the following questions from the observations I made from your account and give me your thoughts when you are able. First, do you remember if you experienced any 360-degree vision while out of your body? You answered one question that you had enhanced vision, but do you remember if it was a vision of everything around you?" And she answered no, not in a visual sense. Mentally, I could sense people in the room around me and even felt that I could feel their thoughts and feelings at times. But visually, it was always the same field of vision I am accustomed to. And that could be, because that she was focusing on certain things, and I don't know, people experience sometimes 360-degree vision. I don't know why that is, and other times not, but I think it's where you're paying attention. Yet she seems to be aware of everything going on around her and even able to read minds, which is, telepathy. That's our normal communication ability when we're not trapped in our human prison bodies. So I wrote to her, when you knew things like knowing the one being was an Archon, was that because you directed your attention or focus on it? Many OBE and NDE accounts include descriptions that indicate knowledge comes when a question is asked, or whatever focus or attention is directed. For example, a person in an NDE out of body looks at a tree and suddenly knows everything about the tree, even when it's like being a tree. So she wrote, "This is difficult to explain. I will do my best. When I heard the loud crack and saw him, I perceived him. I was aware of him, flicking his attention my way. For a millisecond, to assess me absent-mindedly. I sensed him in an instant, and I was not worth his time, especially since I was not the color he could use. The knowing that he was an Archon was like the knowing of a tree that you described. On retrospection, I don't think he was Yahweh or the Demiurge. And it feels very strange to say this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I saw him almost like a neon Tron-like outline of his form against the blackest black possible. Like I was seeing his real self. I don't know what that means, but I was seeing him, the real him. The neon magenta, purple, pink outline of him against the blackest black. He was big, powerful. Seen from below at an angle, muscular, and had a sense that he has muscular tail. That sounds so bizarre, but in the fastest moment of ever perception, I perceived him. He is malevolent, ruthless, cared only to glance to see if he could use me, and could not possibly care less what became of me. I don't know what his purpose was, what he would have tried to use me for. Though I have been a seeker and an avid reader about all the topics my whole life, I had not encountered Gnosticism, nor some of the Babylonian concepts. I have since this NDE. The word Archon probably came up for me somewhere in the context of video games, and also Dungeons and Dragons. The definition of both via these sources do not fit what I knew in that moment at all. He is no angel, nor is he a servant of Satan, or some such, nor is he like a level boss in a video game. LOL. The sense I had of him was that he is one of a few very powerful non-human puppet masters who saw me as about as useful as a paper cup. That he was far away, but that things like distance and concepts of that kind aren't relevant to him, and that he is a dick. I felt a lot of recognition when I started reading about Gnosticism, though not all of that feels correct either. This neon black instant was very distinct from the rest of the experiences I had. I remembered him a few times throughout this, and I felt afraid that he would turn his attention to me again. I did not want that at all. It's interesting she mentioned that it was like a Tron outline or a computer projection, because there's actually theories out there that the Demiurge and Archons are really like an AI. So that is interesting that she brings that up. So then I wrote to her, during NDE and OB events, many people do not realize that they are projecting their human form when they have left their bodies. Some people enter an NDE and realize that they are a being of light or a point of consciousness, and not the human physical body, or even the human form. In Proof of Heaven, Dr. Evan Alexander enters his NDE after a severe infection with an unusual condition. Dr. Alexander experienced reversed amnesia. He did not remember anything about his human existence, and therefore he had no definable appearance. He self-described his being as a point of consciousness. He appears to exist as a sentient individual of pure consciousness, perhaps appearing as a light or energy. On the other hand, former devout atheist Howard Storm entered his NDE with an incredible physical projection of his physical body, even though he was clearly outside of his body. During his experience, Howard Storm was attacked by evil, hateful entities until being saved by a being that appeared to him as Jesus and showing him complete unconditional love. He was then rescued from his attackers. Sound familiar? I have a video about Howard Storm case and you should watch it. Unlike you, Howard Storm was not a nice person before his NDE, and he had no defense against his attackers, like you did. He did call out for help, and then an entity projecting as Jesus comes to help him. Howard Storm is now a Christian minister and doesn't seem to question all the details of his experience that clearly reveals he was tricked. So she wrote back, very familiar. I will look this up. I was a locus of consciousness with very enhanced perceptions, but with a normal field of vision. I did perceive a body sometimes. It was not a physical body. It was a spiritual field that was mine, and it seemed to me that it was actually a banquet for these low creatures, far more easy to torment than a physical body would have been. I remember understanding that I was not there as a body. What I was didn't take damage or of any real kind. It's just an experience. It just experienced torment endlessly. I knew I was there in spirit, not physically, but it did not occur to me to use that. I tried to escape, but I felt anchored there utterly. The only time I came out of that prior to the mother intervening for me was when I saw myself outside my body when they were trying to get the tube back in. I snapped from being anchored in that no place to being outside myself, watching instantly. So I wrote, now during your experience, your account clearly reveals several important clues that seem that there was a frantic and powerful effort made to keep you in a state of constant distraction and confusion. During your experience, based on your account, you clearly are projecting your human form even though you have left your body and perhaps entered a different dimension. Yet the fact that you couldn't possibly still have a human body in this state never occurs to you. Don't worry, this is common. You wrote, these low creatures hated everything and had no concept of a good or bad. They simply wanted to hurt me as much as possible and used my own thoughts against me. It felt completely unjust, and I refused to accept that I was deserving of this. In the first months afterward, I tried not to think about it because if I did, the emotion and memories were so powerful that it was like having a PTSD. I remember feeling I was being crushed between two surfaces, wires being wrapped around my body, flesh being flayed off, always being taunted and mocked. Then I wrote, after she was done her quote, let me just get to the bottom here. As you reflect now that I'm pointing this out, you were trapped and tormented, possibly because you never stopped to think about the state of your being when you rejected their attempts to make you feel that you were deserved to be punished. They lost power over you. Now imagine what would have happened if you realized that you are not your human body, and in this condition you are not human anymore. You had no body to be crushed, no way for wires to be wrapped around you, no flesh or skin to be flayed off. This sounds so horrible. I'm sorry you had to go experience this. Please tell me if you had realized this, what you think would have happened. I've had lucid dreaming experience where I've had taken control of my dreams, manifested, traveled. What would have happened if I had become aware that the same fashion during this experience? I don't know. I think it's very important to question. Thinking of this actually causes me some distress in a way that I have not felt in a while, which is interesting to me. I think it is very worthwhile to ask these questions. I wrote, people that experience voluntary OBEs, including people that comment on my channel, and well-known out-of-body experiencers like William Bullman and Robert Monroe, realized after a while that they could shed their human form and change the state of their conscious form. What if you had realized this? What if you had transformed into a being that projected itself as fire or water? What if you used the intention of your consciousness to free yourself instead of trying to free yourself via projection of human body that was trapped and struggling? What do you think would have happened if you had shapeshifted into something incredibly more potent than the entities that were around you? And she wrote, great questions, all, or to simply shrug them off as a sovereign being that I am. Above them, great questions are to simply shrug them off as a sovereign being that I am above them, not to be controlled or harmed by such as they. I have done a fair amount of meditation, some lucid dreaming, and some hallucinogens in my life, and retaining presence of mind is one of the outcomes of that. Another outcome is very solid understanding of how plastic concepts like reality and our perceptions are. I know that my mind was assaulted by the concussion after fainting, the sepsis, profound shock, the meds I was on, etc. I was hallucinating like crazy. A lot of the time once they took the ventilator out, I was no longer sedated. It was nothing like taking mushrooms or LSD. I saw things that I did not question as being real. I had no sense that I was hallucinating. I thought my family had placed me in a completely insane hospital, and I believed that the severed head on the window ledge was really there. For about 4 nights, they took me off the ventilator. I saw children who had died in the hospital come into my room, move things around, change things, and decorate my room in ways that I could only see. Only I could see. And this happened the same time every night, about 2 a.m. I would hear them playing, going from room to room, and they were mischievous until they gave me a dose of antipsychotic, that is, and then all of the hallucinations stopped, and I hallucinated lots more than what I have shared here. During these days after waking prior to the antipsychotic, I have read about other people having ICU delirium, metabolic encephalopathy, and as a result of these meds, illness, and a friend I know who is suffering delusions and snuck out of her room and called a cab and went to a different hospital. So I know that there are a lot of different factors here. What stands out to me is that at the time I believed all. I believed I had an NDE and went to hell-like place. I believed that there was really a severed head in my room and dead kids in my room every night. One of the most difficult things for me has been trying to understand and accept what was real in any of this entire experience. If anything, for sure, felt real. It was absolutely real on an emotional, personal, spiritual level. I can also say that the character of the different parts of the NDE and the hallucinations, delusional thoughts after I woke up are all totally distinct. Totally different in the way that they felt and the way I perceived them. I can't stress this enough. The moment of perceiving that Archon was totally different from floating in the grip of low beings, which was totally different from the time I spent with the mother, and the time after I awoke was completely out of my head and was totally different from all that happened before. I want to be totally transparent with you about all this. When I awoke, I was totally in the grip of a metabolic encephalopathy, hallucinating and delusional. What I seek is invalidation. I want the truth if I can find it. What fascinates me is that my mind, my brain, was a soup of nonsense, and I was heavily sedated, hovering near death, yet the experience, things that I remember clearly, things that happened in the room when I was sedated were later verified. I was capable of being lucid and taking control during the experience. I'm going to say yes, I think I might have been able to do that or to call for help, but neither thing occurred to me. These thoughts and I wrote back to her, these thoughts and questions I have about you projecting your physical body are very important and could help others who end up in NDE, OB, or dead. Just a few more questions. You said the Archon seemed absent. Was he or she like an artificial intelligence or something else? What did you mean by that description? Have you considered looking at this reality like a game matrix? And in your case, is it at all possible that the goddess, possibly Sophia, was the reality stepping up its procedures on you since you were eventually going to free yourself once given enough time to think? You sound like a strong-willed person, and your tormentors were losing control of you. I'm not saying the goddess was bad or another trick. In fact, I don't know. but it is something to consider. Or perhaps the Gnostics were right, and Sophia is trapped here with the rest of us until we all get out. What do you think? So she wrote, I'm super strong-willed and very analytical. When I awoke and talked to my mom and Wes about this experience, I described the whole thing as bullshit. This is too delicate, but even now I believe it's succinctly accurate. I told them I couldn't talk about it because it was too intense, that I had gone to hell, and that the creatures that were there were total bullshit. Those low beings were total bullshit. And so was everything I thought and said and did. The Archon, he was bullshit. Why was he in charge of anything? He is an utter jerk. The low beings, they know nothing. They're nasty, stupid, and mean. The mother goddess, she's possibly one of them in some way. I can't understand. Is she bullshit? I don't know. Dan, she might be. I still do not know. I'm grateful that she intervened and believe her love was genuine. It's just not that simple. I think she loves everything inside her, all of us, everything. She seemed almost dismayed, but I can't remember enough about my time with her to say much more than that. You wrote, it seemed like the torture done to you was like test for what? Any idea? And she wrote, I don't know. I have a couple of people who are considered shamans tell me that they know what I went through without me telling them anything. They both told me that what I went through in going to hell and making it through the test was a rite of passage. And that I am a new person. They both told me most people are never tested that way, and those who are often die. Do I buy this? I don't know. Yes and no. I feel totally changed by the experience. A new me, a part of who I used to be, was quite literally burned away. I feel like I'm a better person, stronger, gentler, far more kind, patient, and I was capable of being prior to this. I also feel more vulnerable and a heck of a lot closer to a sense I have had my whole life. That this life is a trick, a game. And as beautiful as it is, it's also just a very bad thing. A trap. A trick. Possibly there is a simultaneous sense that everything we do, think, and are matter greatly alongside futility runs so deep because it's all a trick. Because it's all wrong. What we do, who we are, almost matter more. When I listened to the NDE from the man who met the demiurge, there was not a single thing he said that didn't ring totally true to me. I listened to it for comfort. I feel less connected to a confidence about what's true as far as an ideology is concerned. On a spirit level, on a heart level, I feel solid as a rock, that I know if something feels right, but not instantly. But what about the mother? I communicate with her every night before I go to sleep. I don't know what she is, or if she is good for us or not. I believe she provides us with the same exact level of love and attention and acceptance as she does the Archons, demiurge, this planet, etc. And it's the real kind of love. It's truly unconditional love a mom feels. But will it help us? Should it help us? If your mom had 10 kids, she all adores, and a couple of them were criminally insane, she wouldn't intervene beyond a certain point because she loves you all. At some point, you move on. You move out. You become an adult. She's beyond good. She's beyond our morality. She is ruthless, ever giving, all, and I'm not sure I feel that we should be looking to her for answers. One of the strongest emotions I have had in months after all this is outrage, followed by confusion. I feel we are being intentionally held back, and that the world, our world, and experience of it are a way less rational than I would have ever believed. Things turn out to be weird and unfair and fantastic, almost unbelievable. So very far from my concrete Taoist Buddhist roots. It makes me feel I am out at sea, in a weird sea of dark creatures in it, when I previously believed that I was in a grassy field and daisies and wildflowers growing all around me. A stormy sea is a strange place to find myself when you believed you were in a meadow. Do you know what I mean? Again, thanks so much for all this information. After I get your answers, I will post a video about this case. Please, the more details you can offer, the better. Everything is important. And she wrote back, I haven't shared this with anyone so far, but I will share with you in case you feel it matters in some way. I already shared that I feel changed by this experience, that I grew, lost things, gained things on a personality level. Good changes for the most part, though I feel pretty raw about how futile I know things to be. I'm not certain if I can escape or what I would do if I did. What about those I'd leave behind? Would they keep me in this rigged game? I honestly think no. I would bail on this BS if I had the chance and remembered to do so. You better believe it. I have no idea what it would be like outside. All that we know here as humans anyway, in addition to these changes, I have also had very strange and profound sense of other realities. I had a more faint sense of this before in my life, which I cannot explain, but it is something way stronger now. I'll try to describe it. It's like a background sense of all the way things are being. There have been moments in my life when something pivotal happened and I felt this pivotal, powerful knowing that in another reality that person died or I died. It's not like calculating the odds. It's not like calculating the odds or analyzing. Is a feeling of knowing. Since this illness, I have felt this strong knowing that in other realities, people are grieving me. I didn't make it in many of them. I'm finding that it is hard to put into words in a direct way. How to describe the images associated with that and the strange bond I feel to the few other me timelines that still exist. The feeling I have that you really die and are available to be recycled when all the possible instances of you run out of possibilities. I'm not sure everyone is expressing it in many. I think some people may not be in many or even several. In most real of those possibilities, the most fully expressed I become, the more fully expressed as other possibilities fade or are eliminated. At some point, they will all end, and then I will be faced with a choice, and I hope I remember to turn hard left and tell anyone who asks me that I am God, that I am sovereign, then free. Sounds super weird when I write it here. Based on your vids, you are the most likely to have a clue what I'm talking about with all of this, especially the way I feel so skeptical about the entire profound, terrifying experience. The Endorf questionnaire did not have a question asking, do you suspect the whole thing might be total bullshit? If they had, I would have answered yes. In all my imaginings, I never guessed that I would experience something so profound, so life and soul changing, so powerful, and yet walk away with the impression I think it was real. I do not think it was the illness or the meds or anything like that. It was real. I crossed over without physically dying and had a true experience, but doesn't make it real. We are being limited. We have been tricked. lied to, confused, held back. Feel free to ask anything else. I hope any of what I shared made some kind of sense. Thanks again. I answered thanks again from the Overwatch channel. So, that's it. Man, I don't even know how long I did the video for here today. Much longer than normal. Look, what I want to say is, even if you turn the sound off and you want to just read through the text for yourself, I think I agree with what she experienced there. I agree with her conclusions after her experience. I think we can get out of here, folks. I think there's an omniverse out there of many possibilities. I don't know if I would trust anything inside here, whether it was trying to help me or shower me with love or put me in fear. And once you're out of your body, as long as you can focus on the fact that really nothing can hurt you, that you are sovereign, you are free, and you can choose with your intentions to move away from all this bullshit and to get a clear view of what the hell is really going on so you can make an intelligent choice instead of some stupid soul farm reincarnation trap. Well, I'm sure the person who sent me this will be checking out these comments below, because I'm going to post this video and I'll email her to tell her it's up. So if you have any questions for her, she may answer you in the comment section. And questions for me or anything you noticed that I missed, feel free to comment below. And thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys later. Take care. Have a good night or good day or whenever you happen to be watching this. Take care, everybody.